The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, as we wrapped up the week of the trade on Friday, the grain market found some green on the screen. Moderate gains across corn, soybeans, and all three wheat complexes. Contrast that with a sharply lower day in the Dow Jones on Wall Street, the dollar down over a whole percentage point, crude oil off 3%. That spilled into livestock trade as well. Cattle down sharply for the second day in a row on Friday. So some good, some bad. We're going to talk about it here today as we recap the week of the trade. Joining us for a conversation, Christy Van On, she sits with Van On and Company is with us. Christy, welcome back to Market Talk. And I know you have been a bit of a road warrior lately. You've been traveling around parts of the upper Midwest, haven't you?
Yeah, so I took a little bit of a break from traveling. And then I was coaching my oldest daughter's softball. So we had a little bit of a break and then it's done. So now I'm back to traveling, and last week I was down around the Redwood Falls area, and you'll see a lot of people down there this upcoming week for Farm Fest. So they're going to see similar situations, but that has to be one of the poorer spots. I think that you probably go all the way down into that corner of South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa, and that's worse. But once you got down there, I mean, man, I don't know if producers really just gave up on spraying or if they're just behind. But the crop, it definitely obviously needs some spraying done. It's tiny. The drowned out spots are very visible. Some of the corn is not even tasseling yet. So you're like, how is this going to even be able to finish this crop off? And then you cool down here moving forward. So that's not going to help the situation either. So that did not look very good. Now, I am in Dow's, Iowa right now, my favorite place in the whole U.S. Visiting my grandparents. We have a family reunion the first week of August every year for Corn Days. So we are here, and on the way down, I was here back in July, I believe, June, and it was really far behind. And now you're coming in here and things are starting to look better. And I think that's the big problem that we're experiencing right now for these markets, is that everything looks pretty good from the road. I think it's going to be really hard to find areas of large amounts of stress on the crop. I know they're out there, but for a large amount of areas, I just don't think you see it right now. And so that's what you're seeing. You're seeing really green crops. The corn, for the most part, is very uneven, and the beans are still very, very small. So even the good-looking beans, I would say probably if I went up to them, were like knee-high to waist-high, and that's just not typical for Iowa beans. Usually you come here and you could get buried in those beans. And the saying is that short beans can still put on pods. So you don't know, but it's a visual of why these markets are struggling right now. No one's really seeing anything concerning. You talk to producers, you talk to people that are either spraying in a plane or travel via small planes of sorts, and they're like, it is not good from above. You can see all the holes, you can see all the drowned out spots, but that's such a small amount of people that are seeing that. Most people are just seeing how good it looks from the road, and that was evident on the way down. I would say the beans are still very, very small. And that's one thing that surprises me, is that you are starting to have so many people jump on board for these higher yields on both corn and soybeans. And the surprising one to me is I just feel like with how small soybeans are in so many areas, how far behind they are, it is kind of surprising to me that they're willing to increase that yield to a record yield already.
Yeah. Well, I think about this, and I'm generalizing a lot here, but really you go east of Interstate 35 and, farther into the Eastern Corn Belt, and you hear a lot of stories of how good things look. And it seems like that has really outweighed the bad here all year long. But to your point, some of this too is that 80-mile-an-hour windshield test. And I've wondered this for a while now. Once we get combines rolling, if we find more problems than we originally thought, could that be a source of maybe a harvest rally here potentially, Christy?
Yeah, I agree with that comment. And here's the thing, everyone wants to be bearish right now. It's like the cool thing to do. Everyone drank the Kool-Aid. Everyone's really, really bearish. And you have to take a step back, check your emotions, and say, look at the price levels that we're at. The next price levels down are 40 cents lower in corn and, 40 to 60 cents lower in beans. that's like those rare fourth price counts. I'm not saying they can't happen, but to me, when I'm looking at these markets, the risk to the downside is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, that we need to change our mindset and we need to say, hey, maybe this market can go lower, but what is the risk here? Of saying, do we need to be hedging here? Do we need to be doing all of these things here at this level? And I think it comes back to like, what can you store on the farm? That is a much different situation. You can't store it. That's a different conversation. But I do think that you're going to start getting in the field. I also think, seed genetics have focused for so long on drought tolerance. The old saying, and I've seen it everywhere posted, rain makes grain. And I'm wondering, is too much of a good thing a bad thing? And you've had so many areas with so much moisture around us, it never stops raining. And so I think those are going to be the things that we find out later. I know that Pro Farmer can be like a very hot topic for a lot of producers. I went on it, gosh, what was it, 4 years ago, I think. I had a phenomenal time. I can say that, as I took this tour for Pro Farmer, it was a random selection. We had our route. We were not cherry picking fields, and it was eye-opening to me. So I'm very anxious to kind of see what they see in the fields, and that's about 3 weeks away. And so before you know it, we're going to be getting a lot of information. This set through August 12th, I'm just very afraid that the market's going to struggle to grasp onto something without kind of a black swan. We don't have a whole lot of information. Then we come on August 12th. And we know that NASS Statistics is reviewing some information. They're going to take FSA numbers into this situation. And I am going to be focusing on harvested acres very closely for corn. And the reason I'm doing that is just because the percentage, if you go back in history on a percentage of harvested acres compared to planted acreage, we're very high right now on that. And just given the situation that we have, I do not think that is going to be the case. And so I do think you could see some drastic changes. Maybe not in one swoop, right, from August, but that you will see that harvested acre number come down. And that makes a big difference. So we have to remember that the carryout level we currently have in corn is nothing outrageous. Like, we were very scared you were going to have a 2.4, 2.5 billion bushel carryout. You're not there. And so, I just feel like this could be a year that the bottom sets early. And so I think we need to start looking at that and kind of saying, hey, we have a lot of time before we actually know exactly what the crop is out there, but we have penciled in so much bearish information. I'm not sure what else we could get besides some economic problems, some world dynamics to really bury this market.
So essentially, kind of put aside the bearishness, so to speak, and at this point, if you can, maybe play the waiting game here for a few weeks. Is that essentially kind of the methodology here, Christy?
Yeah, I am not a store and ignore. Like, I think store and ignore is what got us into this problem right now, is that so many people sat on corn in the bin as a crutch, and they are paying for it now. So that is not necessarily what I'm saying. It's just that I'm saying, don't let the emotions get the best of you right now. And let's say the emotions are getting the best of you. You're like, I have no marketing done. I can't sleep at night. This is driving me nuts. If you can store that crop, the carries in the market are able to really entice you, 35-cent carry out to July. To add that on, looking at that, you could hope for a close to par basis. That's like $4.35 cash. Hopefully that is at your break evens, or at least a start of saying it's not horrible, that you could see some of that. So there are options if you really want to, but I would say if you can be patient here, I would not be adding to marketing.
We are talking today with Christy Van On Sheeseth with Van On and Company as we take a recap of the week in the markets, and with the grains a bit higher on the day Friday. I know too, you kind of alluded to it as well, but some basis pops, there's some opportunity out there if you need to. And I know some folks, maybe they are full with their on-farm storage. Obviously, we're wrapping up the 23-24 marketing year. We're going to shift over to the new crop marketing year. I mean, there's some folks that maybe they have to make a decision here. They have no other choice. At least I know there's some tools out there and some of those basis pops and things like that. There's some ways to navigate this if you are just absolutely stuck right now, right?
Yeah, and so this is a question we've started to get more frequently, is that I don't have room to store everything at harvest. What should I sell? We also had one of our coworkers. He was down at the Stearns County Fair. His daughter showed cattle, and he was down there and he was talking to FSA so we could get some information on CC loans and their prices. And the FSA guy was talking to him and just saying, hey, our door is constantly swinging in with people completely backwards on their loans. And I think this is a concern that I do think you are starting to see the pinch in the farm economy right now, that you are going to have guys that have to sell at harvest. And I think that you have a lot of guys that have not sold what they're supposed to sell going into harvest. You talk to any grain buyer right now, they're going to tell you they do not have on the books what they typically have. And so I am worried about basis come harvest. It is not great in our area, period, but I'm worried that it could get worse. And so when I'm talking to guys right now, I'm pretty much saying what basis level is best for you right now compared to what it typically is. And let's just say that's soybeans. Let's say, hey, you know, they're posting a 60 under at an elevator. Typically, it can get out to 80 at harvest. I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, cash those beans out at 60 under, cash the futures in, buy the futures board back. You can buy any futures board back. You cannot be playing the basis game with taking cash in hand. And so that is how I'm looking at it and saying, review the basis that you have, cash it out like completely. Don't just lock in basis, cash it out completely, take the cash, buy it back, and give yourself some time to be able to work with those futures. And that's how I'm viewing this situation. I know there's going to be a lot of questions on DP. I am not a huge fan of DP. I actually pretty much despise it, but it has its situations sometimes that can benefit. I would say if you're going down the DP route, set a line in the sand and just say, hey, I'm willing to pay DP until the end of the year, and that is it. I will get past harvest. I will get to the December timeframe when we typically see basis levels start to improve, and that is all I'm willing to do. And I think too many times people sign up for DP, put their bushels on there, and then they get to that, you know, oh, I was going to price it out at this point, but it's not great, so I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. And do not do that, because before you know it, you've just really racked up some serious costs in DP, and it's just hard to get that back, and you just don't know what could happen. And so if you are going down that route, I would really just, you know, put an alarm in your phone, circle a date on the calendar, and say, this is it. It is going to be priced out by this point.
A lot of what we've been talking about, I'm wondering, is there any different dynamics for the wheat markets from what we've kind of touched on here, Christy?
Yeah, so and everyone's saying, hey, it looks pretty good, but there's some disease issues. So we'll know a little bit more about 2 weeks from now. Everything that I've heard is that winter wheat winter wheat yields are phenomenal and like crazy and huge. And I'm somewhat concerned we're going to see that carry through into the wheat. We seem to be unable to really pick up any demand for wheat right now either. And so it's a bit of a struggle fest. And if you're in kind of the Dakota area, western Minnesota, around our neck of the woods, it's just these end users have nowhere to do with the wheat, right? Like at least they know that if they get full on corn, they get full on beans, they can get it somewhere. They can get it out, whether it's great for them or not, really profitable for them not, they know that they can at least get it out the door. Wheat's a little bit of a different situation right now, and so I think they're struggling with that overall. And so the basis bids are not there. I am fearful that, you know, if you were to talk about corn, beans, and wheat and which one has the least amount of marketing done that needs to be done, it would be wheat. I know a lot of farmers right now that have old crop wheat still in the bin, and they're 2 weeks out from harvesting this new crop, and they just have nothing done. And so I do think you're going to see a flood of that. And the fear would be that these elevators are going to come in and say, hey, I am expecting a very large soybean and corn crop. We don't want any wheat. And that they're just going to turn it down and say, hey, it can't go here. And now you're going to have to put it in bins that you were planning for something else. So it is a little bit of a struggle fest. So I'd say if you're about to harvest wheat, you have a favorable basis, get something done so at least it can get out the door and you're not bottlenecking your situation up.
All right. Let's talk livestock a little bit here. Are you worried about maybe a cattle top being in if this Wall Street picture continues to capitulate lower potentially? Maybe this is a 1-2 day aberration in the outside markets, but really feels like that has impacted this cattle trade sharply here the last couple of sessions of the week. And I just wonder, do we worry that a cattle top could be in, or at least cattle getting capped by some of this concern in the outside markets, Christy?
Yeah, I think so. Live cattle concerns me a little bit more than feeder cattle on a chart perspective. Like live cattle has really came up to this 1.2 standard deviation away linear regression. And that's kind of an area that can pause the market, and it's really been pausing this market. And so on a chart, live cattle are very, very concerning. Feeder cattle have consolidated into such a tight area. You've obviously seen the most downside in feeder cattle, so a different situation, but both are concerning to me. I think the thing that we need to remember is that cash remains pretty favorable, demand remains pretty okay, and so that is going for you. So your actual cash sales should be okay, but the futures board is a much different situation. And if we continue to see this liquidation into the futures board, eventually that's going to spill over to cash of some sort. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now, is those fears of a recession, the fear of the economy not doing as well as we thought it would do. I mean, the Dow market has taken like 1,800 points over the last 2 days. I think it has been. It's been something absolutely crazy. And we have to remember we are coming into an election not that far away from now. And this volatility is going to stick around for a while in these outside markets. And that spills over into the commodity markets. And so that's what we're seeing right now, is that no matter how strong fundamentally you could have the cattle situation, some things, technicals, outside markets can trump that situation, and managed money isn't sitting at record shorts like they are into the grain markets right now for meat. So if they wanted to really go after them and pound them, they have a lot of room to be able to sell. So it is concerning to me that you see this. I would say that if we could kind of consolidate here, get a lift back, I would throw some put spreads underneath it, or kind of go and talk to your insurance agent to get some of those puts on, those subsidized puts, which are so great to have in markets like this, because maybe the cash doesn't slip as much, but your futures board is providing you a nice slide to be able to be profitable on that. So I think that's a huge thing to be looking at. I am concerned about the outside markets. I think that there's a lot right now. There is some scary stuff actually going on in Japan, and the relationship between the U.S. and Japan as far as the currency rates go. And I think that's a big thing to be watching moving forward, is that's kind of dicey. So there's just a lot of moving parts. Obviously, it doesn't seem like things are cooling down in the Middle East. And so these are the situations that get a little bit scary. And to be honest, for 2 years now, we've been talking, not like I mean, like the whole market in general has been talking about fundamentally cattle are strong, but the outside markets are the one black swan that no one's going to be able to guess and no one's going to be able to fight. So you just need to be prepared and layering in some downside protection in there.
No, that's great perspective. And I think just to take it a step further on the outside markets, I mean, you look at the overall economy and the concerns about our economy, and we saw, unemployment numbers and more out Friday. We've gotten all these earnings reports from ag companies that have been down sharply, things like that. It's a tough environment across the board right now, Christy.
Yeah, it is. And to be honest, like the U.S. is not overly liked right now, and that's a little bit concerning to me when you see that perspective. And we are not drumming up the demand that we should be drumming up right now, right? So on a typical year, China should be gobbling up our beans right now at the price level that we're at, and we're finally starting to see them dip their toes in. We've had a few private sales that are very small in soybeans to China, but we should be seeing like 500, 600, 800 million metric ton or 800,000 million metric ton of these bean purchases happening right now, and we are not seeing that. And that is very concerning, because we have a big bean crop. I talked about yield, and I feel like people are jumping ahead too far on the yield situation with beans. But regardless, let's say even if you have the posted yield right now that USDA has in there, we have too many beans around. And so we need somebody to come in here and buy them. And I'm hoping you can see that situation. But, days like this, when you have the stock market down and the US dollar is kind of flirting at getting a breakout or rallying, that is not what we want to see, because that does not help our situation at all.
Great stuff as always, Christy. If folks want to reach out to you and your team there at Van On and Company to talk about their marketing plan and more, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can call us at 1-800-648-5494.
And I know they can find you online as well at vanonco.com. Christy Van On, she sits with Van On and Company. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for being with us on Market Talk, and we'll have you back on the show again soon.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@markettalkegg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Egg on YouTube.